Hello everyone, I've made several videos before titled How to Build a Persona, featuring some personas in the Persona games that are considered iconic. Since Metaphor ReFantazio is my new favorite JRPG made by Atlus, I figured it's time to make a version of it for Archetypes. So here is how to build an archetype featuring Seeker. But first, some ground rules first. Have fun building your own archetype. This video will have my version of Seeker, from analyzing what their role is, what their niches are, and what they do best in combat, and this is what I deem to be the quote-unquote thematic build for Seeker with the additions of thematic skill inheritance. You might not agree with some of the skills to be thematically correct, but that's where the fun of this is, to build your own archetype. This is just me suggesting what I think is the best while balancing both viability and theme for each archetype. Of course, if you have your own archetype build and want to share them, feel free to write those down in the comments below. This video will be structured talking one by one from the basic archetype of the Lineage for the purpose of early game, talking about their characteristics, strengths, and weaknesses, then think about the skills to be inherited based on the analysis, and lastly, talk about their synthesis skills, which are worth casting and have them ready with the archetype combinations in your party, and which of them are not. Then move on with the Adept archetype for around early to mid game, talking about the same content up until the Elite archetype for the end game. And without further ado, there's a lot to talk about, so let's just start with Seeker. Seeker is the first archetype that you will receive in-game and is awakened by the main protagonist of the game. Further ranks of the Seeker archetype can be unlocked through forging a follower bond with more in the Academia, with a linear upgrade path to Magic Seeker as the Adept level archetype and Soul Hacker as the Elite level archetype. Seeker is quite possibly the jack-of-all-trades archetype of the game, as it has an even stat spread and pools of skills that almost covers all playstyle. That being said though, I'm gonna level with you here. The Seeker archetype feels pretty bad. The Seeker is the jack-of-all-trades, but that also means it's a master of none. With another variety of accessible archetypes in the game, it is kinda weird to have an archetype lineage to basically be the weaker version of those archetypes, especially also when you can inherit skills to other archetypes. But to argue the Seeker's strong side is that the Seeker is one of the few archetypes that has access to wind skills to exploit the enemy's wind weakness. And well, that's pretty much it really. The Seeker archetype has Psych, the wind one, and they at level 1 when you first receive the archetype. The Seeker will later gain more skills with levels such as Tarukaja, Sweeping Slash, Cyclo, and Tetra Break. As mentioned before, these skills serves almost all purposes in battle, but are arguably pretty bad because most of these don't really have a good consistent application. Wind and healing skills are always great, but you'll only use those when the enemy has a weakness or that someone was on low health. Tetra Break is obviously a good tool when the enemy has Tetrakarn, and only that. Sweeping Slash feels weirdly put since in purpose of slash weakness, the weapon attack is already a slash attack, so if anything it is just for more damage. The only somewhat consistent application skill is arguably Tarukaja, but that is also when you don't have anything to exploit weakness on, and when you have a free turn, since it still wastes a move for 1 rank of attack buff on 1 ally, which in all honesty, the turn icon can be used for killing the enemies early, so not much of a consistency I guess. Plus, before I forgot to mention, the fire weakness on Seeker is pretty crippling on most encounters, since fire is arguably the most common element that enemies can have. It's set in a world where the default igniter is the Cinder Igniter, which is for casting fire elemental skill. And I try not to spoil here, but one early game boss uses fire, so you might be struggling a lot if you decided to brute force it using Seeker at early stages of the game. So how should we improve upon this archetype? Honestly, it's hard to say because you can just put any skill here and it is valid because it encapsulates almost all playstyles available. In my opinion, however, the best skill to take for this in the early game is probably just Medi from Healer for the area healing. In the early game, the Seeker will be the primary healer if there's no healer in the party, so making the Seeker have more healing tools to save up on turn icons is always good. Other than that, it is probably good to take Fire Dodge from Merchant to get more chances to dodge what you're weak to. Evading attacks is also a huge plus to manipulate the press turn system, since any instances of evading depletes 2 times the turn icons instead of the usual one. By the time of the game, you'd probably have enough slots to inherit up to now, but more choices is great, so I'll give more. That being said though, I'm out of ideas what to pick for the early game, so I figured any affinity damage skills can be useful as well, like the 3 elements from Mage, Hama from Healer, or the strike physical attack skills from Brawler like Perfect Punch or Skullcracker, in which Skullcracker takes the cake since it could inflict Forget as well. For Seeker's synthesis skills, not a lot are notable enough to change your archetype combination. The buffing skills like Matarukaja and Adventurous Curiosity are nice to have, but again, synthesis skills requires 2 turn icons to cast, and it feels not worth it to cast them for the cost. Adventurous Curiosity is nice for criticals, and in turn, it can be used for manipulating turns like exploiting weaknesses, but critical strikes are still chance-based, and it still has chances to go the opposite of your plan. Plus, for Matarukaja, the thing about Metaphor ReFantazio that was different from Persona is that the buffs and debuffs have ranks that stacks on each recast up to a maximum rank. It's practically the same as Nocturne and SMT5 for example, but where Nocturne is on 4 ranks maximum, Metaphor on 3 ranks max, SMT5 on 2 ranks max, and Persona on 1 rank only. It's not an advantage to Metaphor as well, since how it works is not that rank 1 is the same across these games, but from my understanding, every max ranks were similar across games, so lower ranks are scaled down even though they require the same turn action. So in the case of Matarukaja, while it is such a powerful skill in Persona, it is not as good in Metaphor ReFantazio because of the rank system and the increasing turn icon requirement because it is a synthesis skill, so not worth it. With all these, however, the damaging synthesis skills are pretty good to have, especially when the enemies are weak to the affinity. Gasaik or Gasaiklo are typically used for a group of enemies that are weak to wind, making the battle end in one fell swoop, so make sure to have either a mage, a healer, or another seeker in the team when you go into a dungeon with enemies weak to wind. Conversely, Rider of the Blade and Horse-Drawn Carnage are useful when fighting a single army boss or mini-boss, plus points when they are weak to light and or strike. To gain Rider of the Blade, pair your Seeker with a Knight, a Healer, or a Commander, which is unlocked a little bit later in the early game. To gain Horse-Drawn Carnage, pair your Seeker with a Warrior, a Brawler, or a Berserker, which you won't unlock until the endgame. To gain all these synthesis skills that are mentioned in one go, pair your Seeker with both a healer and a choice between a warrior or a brawler. But it is better to bring a brawler since brawler with healer had a powerful synthesis skill when paired together. But I'm not gonna talk about that in this video. Next up, we have the Magic Seeker. In-game, the Magic Seeker is described as the archetype that has more variety of synthesis skills that the Magic Seeker otherwise won't learn, while also being the straight-up upgraded version of the base Seeker. The Magic Seeker starts with Cyclo and Tarukaja, a direct inherit from Seeker. Further increasing the Magic Seeker's level will make it learn Deyama, Wind Dodge, Cyclone, and Vitalja. Magic Seeker is probably the first time you'll get a heavy magic ability as well, making this archetype a great wind magic damage dealer. Not much to add here honestly, other than these skills are a direct upgrade to what Seeker has, and the Wind Dodge is a very nice thing to have. But Vitalja though is a huge upgrade from Tarukaja, as it provides 2 ranks of not just attack but also defense as well, making the skill such a huge game changer. That is until you have the Commander archetype leveled, and with that we jump straight to what skills should we inherit to Magic Seeker. Vitalja is nice, but is quickly outclassed by Formation of Figure from the Commander archetype. Formation of Figure did the same 2 ranks of attack buff, but instead of 1 ally, it is for all allies. It does have some drawbacks though, like that it forces everyone to the front lines. Being either in the front lines or the back lines can be vital to the battle, but for the matter of Formation of Figure, I have to say the forced formation is a non-issue since you can freely change formation in your turn. That is unless you did Formation of Figure on the last turn icon of your turn. Nevertheless, Formation of Figure is such a strong skill that I even still use until the end of the game. So I highly recommend this skill to be inherited not just for Magic Seeker, but possibly for all archetypes, within reasons of course. The next skill that I'd like to promote is another skill from the Commander Lineage, but from its Adept archetype, the General. This skill is Shelter Formation. Simply put, this is the defensive version of Formation of Figure. It raises 2 ranks of defense and pulls everyone back into the backlines. Arguably, everything going on about this skill is better executed than Formation of Figure, since most of the cases that you want a little bit of defense from formation can be forced by this skill, even if this is the last turn icon of your turn. So I recommend the second skill would be Shelter Formation. Next up, having either Medica and or Recarm are also nice skills to have to complement that Magic Seeker is also a healing archetype, but having only a single target healing ability. Although a big healing, it feels a bit off, so it's always nice to have a group healing. At this point in the game, you'd also probably realize that the archetype system won't give you a reviving spell passively like how Persona did it, so you have to actively search for Recarm from Cleric to have a reviving tool, or otherwise you'll have to stock up on revival medicine. So Recarm is also a great quality of life skill to have. Other than that, I'm not really sure since we can just put our favorite skills in and it would probably be no problem. My favorite skill for this section of the game is probably the Lurking Nightblade from Assassin. It is a very nice tool for any boss or mini-boss since dodging is great for manipulating their turn icons, making you in less danger and having more convenient battles. But if you don't have the skill yet, you can substitute it with Shield Arts from Knight. For Magic Seeker's synthesis skills, referring to the Magic Seeker's description having more variety, it unironically is just Fireblade Rider, replacing Rider of the Blade. Everything else is the same with some skills being upgraded, like the multi-target wind magic skills being upgraded to Ga Cyclo and Ga Cyclone, and Matarukaja to Heat Riser. So for this, it's basically the same thing as before. Get Ga Cyclo or Ga Cyclone by pairing with a mage, healer, or another seeker for encounters against multiple enemies that are weak to wind. Get Horse-Drawn Carnage by pairing with a warrior, brawler, or berserker for a single strong enemy that is weak to strike. And get Fireblade Rider by pairing with a knight, healer, or commander for the same case as before but weak to fire. I would suggest to stay away from Heat Riser. While they are beneficial to raise all 3 stats, they are only by 1 rank and for 1 party member, with synthesis skills requiring 2 turn icons as well. This is practically a waste of resource in battle. Lastly, we have the elite archetype of the Seeker lineage, the Soul Hacker, and this is basically where the lineage starts to shape up their game, because this is where the Seeker archetype started to have a niche, whether you might think it's worth the investment or not. Because Soul Hacker's niche is to have not just one, but 2 strong area magic attacks that also drains MP with every hit. The MP drain is counted per enemy, so on encounters where there are a lot of enemies, you'll gain more MP as there are more MP sources to be drained from. Of course, these skills have caveats as well, like it works as a draining mechanism and the MP is not pre-calculated when casting, so there is still an initial MP cost to it, but nonetheless, this makes the Soul Hacker a worthy archetype for MP conservation. Other than that, the Soul Hacker also gets other strong magic skills like Void Wave and Emerald Vortex, which both of them are actually really strong for their own strength. Void Wave is excellent for single target boss battles since it also reduces the enemy's attack while being a single target skill, while Emerald Vortex completely ignores enemies' resistance, making things like whether the enemy is resistant, nullifies, or reflects wind not too much of a concern. And to top it all off, previous Seekers supporting synthesis skills are learnable now through Soul Hacker, such as Adventurous Curiosity and Heatriser, so they are arguably worth casting now as it only requires 1 turn icon. All in all, a solid archetype for any encounters, but especially for long dungeon runs. But a weird thing that I have to mention about Soul Hacker is that this archetype is weirdly heavily magic coded as their skills are all magic damage. Yet Soul Hacker still receives an even stat spread as it is still from the Seeker lineage. There are some synthesis skills that are physical damage, but leaving no normal physical skills still feels weird for me. So for skill inheritance, my recommendation is leaning towards a physical skill to be inherited. My choices are Giant Slice or Raging Edge from Samurai and Swordsmaster, Elusive Dream from Assassin, Lurking/Adamant Nightblade from Assassin and Ninja, Power/Health Thrust from Pugilist and Martial Artist, or Slam Strike/Shatter from Berserker. But since this is the elite archetype, meaning this is for the late game, I gotta flex my quote-unquote creative thematic skill picking brain for this. The most obvious physical skill for Seeker would be a /type skill since the Seeker uses a sword. So Giant Slice, Raging Edge, or Elusive Dream takes the slot. Leaning towards Elusive Dream because it also absorbs MP that Soul Hacker is also famous for. Weirdly enough, Destroyer had a skill that looked like it could have been from the Seeker lineage. It is called Windbreaker. It is a really nice skill as it reduces the enemy's defense as well, making it a cute pair with Void Wave. The other skills that I'd probably recommend is kind of a cop-out since I'm taking the previous choices into here. Sorry guys, but Formation of Figure and Shelter Formation from Commander and General are still really great skills up to late game as I mentioned before. Fire Dodge from Merchant is also a great skill since Soul Hacker is still weak to fire. Healing skills are also valuable in any case as well. Skills like Samaric Arm, a direct upgrade to Rick Arm from Cleric, and Medical, a direct upgrade of Medica from Savior, are great when the party member gets the unfortunate end of the stick. But picking new stuff for Soul Hacker though, complementing on their magic damage is a good option as well. Hyper from Warlock is Metaphor's version of Concentrate, so it's always good to deal more damage from a single magic attack. Dance of Verger from Persona Master is a good way to make an enemy weak to win, to get some damage in, to manipulate turn icons, and to make sure you hit the attack down debuff on Void Wave. But I don't really see the practical use for this. But again, if you'd like that skill, it is a good option that I would consider. Putting more of a meme pick that somehow fits the Soul Hacker's theme of draining MP, max MP increasing passive, or MP recovery passive are kinda good too. Things like Magic Reversion and or Magic Vessel are MP related passive skills that can be inherited and fits quite well with Soul Hacker being an MP recovering archetype. Magic Reversion and Magic Vessel are from Warlock. For Soul Hacker's synthesis skills, honestly, Soul Hacker's synthesis skills were pretty disappointing. Winning Horse is straight up the upgraded version of Horse Drawn Carnage, which isn't bad, but is pretty lame, especially in the late game. Cyclone Slasher is a great win magic damage skill, but it requires 2 other party members, which also means 3 turn icons being consumed. Soulblade Rider is a synthesis skill that I think should not be touched at all because of how disappointing it is, as it advertises as an MP recovery skill like other skills that Soul Hacker has, yet it only hits 1 enemy, making it a fixed net loss of MP. The only synthesis skill worth mentioning in my opinion is Trial of the Seeker, as it is basically one of the MP recovering magic skills that Soul Hacker had, but it is a magic almighty damage, meaning it definitely will hit and drain MP regardless of resistance. So to get Trial of the Seeker, pair Soul Hacker with either a warrior, a thief, or a mass dancer. And there you have it, my builds of all the archetypes of the Seeker lineage. This is possibly one of the hardest builds that I made because basically everything in the game is being put into consideration, so there's a lot of moving parts here. I wanted to make this a series and at least make a version of Warrior next, but with only 1 work first for this channel, I can't really make any promises. And without a doubt, there's gonna be some stuff that I left out of the video, and if you have any differing opinion on the build, leave a comment if you want to share your build. Have fun playing Metaphor ReFantazio with Seeker.